all coming in. I don't think everyone's here yet.
Yeah, we'll wait till we get there.
Okay. Okay, that should be everyone.
Okay.
I don't see all their I think I hear some.
Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
I think we can
Welcome,
start.
everyone. And I'm going to just start out with the, the bump up, but I'm going to do a little bit of an exercise that I taught a number of you just for starters before I get into doing the containment. So, okay, going to do the bump up. Okay, so hands about 12 inches apart, and pushing that energy in. All right. Anyone not feeling it, let me know. Good. All right, so I'm going to raise it. You should feel that increasing. Anyone not feeling that increase, let me know. Okay. Very good. Now we're going to do our containment. Starting now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. And all of you are veterans, so I don't need to explain why we're doing that. So, pick something up. I'm going to do an extra one. Starting 1, 2, 3. Okay, terrific. All right, Ms.A, we're going to do the intros.
Yes. So, everyone, today is the 17th NSTHA Neo Shamanic Women's Forum, Global Edition. So, as you know from all the messages that were sent, today's movie review is going to be the movie Inside Out by Pixar and Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we're going to just start with, talking about the movie, more or less a synopsis.
Right.
And from there, we'll start to answer questions. We've got a lot of really good questions for this forum. Thanks to all of you who send in your questions.
Okay. So as the movie begins, you know that it's showing you what, like, the first scene was, I believe, with her as a baby, and how the first visual that you get is her as a baby, I do believe, and also a visual of joy. We did have a submission about, like, what is joy from a neo-shamanic perspective, and we'll get to that whenever it comes up. Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. But anyway, you can just go ahead and then I'll just jump in where.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
So, some people, like she just said during some of your sessions, or maybe from a previous form, that there are attachments that can follow you from a previous expression. And, yeah.
So, approaching it from that angle, the question was, what is joy? And also just what are all the other emotions? But joy is the first one that shows up,
Yeah,
right?
the first one that shows up.
And and as far as an attachment is concerned, she doesn't really behave like an attachment, like someone who's there to, for nefarious reasons to bring down the avatar. If anything, she seemed to be someone who's trying to keep things going and keep things balanced. So even with all the other emotions, she just seemed she didn't fit in the same way as as the other ones. So with her, I would say that she seemed more like a fragment of the actual consciousness of the kid. The kid's name is what?
Riley.
Riley, of the child Riley. And also, when you look at her, she's a full-grown woman, I believe.
Yeah, she kind of looks like 18 or in her 20s.
Okay, well, someone actually who's grown, who's not an infant.
Yeah, she's not.
Yeah, so as far as like what their intention was, as far as how they chose the characters and the age and so on and so forth, I have no idea. You have to ask the writers, what was on their mind. But of course, they wouldn't know it from a Neo Shamanic point of view. But from there, we have her coming in, and then I think it has to do with accumulating memories or something from the beginning.
Yes. Would you like me to share a little bit more about a fragment and how they behave different than attachment, or should I just go?
No, we can go ahead and get,
Okay.
we can be thorough about it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So, for example, you've heard about mirror consciousness, which come from traumatic experiences that are like Chief. He says when he's seeing mirror consciousness and how they grow, he said they grow like polyps of fear or whatever situation that you experienced that was traumatic, like stress or whatever. They grow like little polyps, and it's really kind of interesting that the movie Inside Out shows visuals of little creatures that could easily be explained away as a mirror consciousness. They look like little amoebas. If you recall watching the movie, or if you want to watch it again, look for the little amoebas. They're kind of everywhere. They infest all of Riley's mind.
I guess the first scene we saw was they were on that train. Was it the train to? I forgot what the name of the train was.
Train of thought.
The train of thought, yeah. When Say was describing it, that they look like amoebas, and then after observing the movie for a while, realized that they literally behave like MCs, so mirror consciousness, and a number of them had their own agenda. They were doing all these different things, and it was almost like it was separate from the control panel and what Joy and these others were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, I know what we wanted to get into.
Examples of that.
Well, I wanted to actually go to the point where, well, again, I felt like the memory stuff started earlier.
It did, but it started right after we haven't fully finished the fragment part.
Well, the amoebas, I don't know so much if they, that's like a separate thing.
Oh yeah,
MCs.
I'm about to explain.
Okay.
So you'll see that I only let them know about mirror consciousness so that we can push that aside and learn about something new, which would be fragments. Is that okay?
Okay, because I was concerned because the mirror consciousness come in later.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll follow your lead.
I don't know. I just felt like that it would be easy for people to confuse an MC versus a fragment.
Mm.
So whenever there is something very traumatic, not only can you produce a mirror consciousness, also a fragment can occur, a fragment of one's own consciousness. So it's sometimes there will be things behavior that I had that I would try to blame on an MC, but Chief said actually it's a fragment, and it also needs to be deleted at times because it is also damaged. So Joy was, she feels that she'd be more associated with a fragment because she desired balance for Riley or Joy, but she also felt that that the attachments were necessary or useful, and that shows her contamination or damage.
Yeah, in other words, conditioned consciousness, literally. Well, again, if you look at it, and then I'm going to just move to this other part of where it has to do with the memories,
Yes.
and then these balls that represent the memories, and you're saying that it ended up being like this endless number, almost like they were stacked on top of each other, like apartment buildings or business, buildings in Manhattan, but they went off into a distance.
Yes.
And this is a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, how would she have so many memories? And and whether they were intentionally doing it subliminally or not, for a little kid to have that many memories, to me, it had to be like, I guess, rollover from past expressions. And that's where I feel that the joy character comes from, those previous expressions. And again, you said some of them were dusty as they went further out. So again, it's a little kid. She's supposed to be, squeaky new and so on and so forth. But inside of her is all this old stuff. Okay. So where you were going with that?
Yeah. Just like you said, it starts off with showing you that the first character you see is joy, and then after that it's sadness, and then each time Riley has an experience, it makes a ball with the memory inside of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. We can muscle test, or if you just like to go with it, density can live within your memories. That's why you'll see in a lot of different shows and movies, they're always like, don't let go of your memories.
Yeah.
That's what makes you human, or that's really your most precious, the most precious thing you have is your memories, which is that.
Yeah, they do preach that a lot, and if you want, we can do a muscle test on that. Because after I had planned on, I decided to do the other exercise instead of doing the check.
Okay.
But we'll see how they behave. All right, screen. This is protection again for Mrs.A. So the question or the comment had to do with the memories, that memories hold density, or density can live in memories. Yes or no? Yes. Yes. Which
You know how it showed in Inside Out the number of memories that are inside of someone's energy. Would that be an accurate number of how much real estate density has at their disposal?
well, for that particular character, because everyone's different, everyone has their own amount of memory I should say contaminated memory, really. So everyone has their own amount in there. One of the things that with memory, I don't know if I'm going to jump the gun with this, having to do with setting one up for disappointment through memory as well. So, for instance, individuals, been together for a while in a relationship, the relationship's going south, and so someone has a bright idea. Why don't we reflect back on the days when things were going well, when we were into each other, and so on. Let's go to the first, restaurant that we first met, or we had a first date at, and and everything was going really, really well. So what happens with density living inside of these memories is that they're setting the person up. You go back, and you probably even know people done it. You might have done it yourself at some point, where, okay, let's go back to, this restaurant and try to recapture the past. So of course you're going back and nothing is the same. There's the waiter or the waitress that, was waiting on you at the time has long moved on to doing whatever they're doing. Certain other things having to do with the location of change and so on. So you go in and you're trying to recapture this memory, and it just doesn't work. If anything, it sets you up for major disappointment. So, you end up being very disappointed and just like, in other words, it just feels like this relationship is just even picked up more speed because of that. That hasn't worked. So with, sorry for a second. Yeah, go ahead, you continue, because I'll hit the water. it up.
So, so then it's showing that each one of these, as soon as she has each experience, they already become recorded in these memory balls or something like that. But whenever Chief was talking about how the lessons that you learn are already recorded in your consciousness, in your higher consciousness. You don't need to keep all these memories around like a whoopee or like a security blanket. A lot of times people will use the memories as a security blanket. Sometimes I used to do that too. Anything that was like a good experience, I had this drawer in my mind where I would just put all these memories of what I thought were good experiences. Because I lived in a very miserable environment, I would pull out this drawer and re-look at memories to try to comfort myself so I could try to keep going. But whenever I met Chief's daughter and I met Chief, they were like, let that go. Let those memories go. What's coming in the future is better than what you had. And when you hold on to that, you're also feeding density that's connected to those memories, as well as you're hiding from everything. And Chief taught me how to face all the experiences that I had in the past instead of just using those memories as a security blanket.
Yeah, one of the things having to do with the memories again, someone will say, well, how would I remember a skill that I learned at a certain point? And as Mrs.A was saying, is that information is like, it's like muscle memory. In other words, you do something enough times, it becomes just part of your natural way of doing things. So you don't really have to hang on to the memory of when you first learned it. In other words, it's in your energy, it's in your awareness. So in other words, whatever the skill is, it's in your awareness that you learn. You don't have to sit and then, recollect. But again, how density deals with, plays around with memory. I have individuals come in for sessions and they will not remember certain things until a certain point in the clearing. Then all of a sudden they start to remember things. But it has nothing to do with, like skills and so on. But there are times when a person can have, like a pin for your, for your ATM or whatever, the number you punch in for the ATM. And you've been punching it in for years, and then all of a sudden, you go and you can't remember the pin. And this is different from a learned sequence or anything. This literally has to do with something interfering with that particular part of the memory. Because if you notice, and I think there's a lot of psychological, talk about, basically segmenting, compartmentalizing memories. So one of the things that happens if you're into this in this realm and your memories are compartmentalized, yeah, it's easy for something to actually end up being seemingly forgotten. It's not forgotten; it's been moved, literally. Because one of the things I've learned through just the work that I do on people is that those memories aren't gone. Individuals talk about, well, here in this realm, they talk about the Akashic records, something that's written and it's written about everything that you've done and so on and so forth. That stuff does exist. Akashic records, I've talked about it. I won't go into any detail about it now because we've already talked about that before. But all of those memories, certain things having to do with how you function and how you learn how to cook and so on and so forth. Yeah, the memories of how you learn are there, but it becomes, again, something that you do over and over again. It really, and that's, again, you're getting hit with density, you're not going to forget those things. And again, those memories are not lost, they're just moved to another location. Now, am I moving?
Well, you were talking about how though the memories get moved around, the more you move forward in your Neo Shamanic journey, the more it is good to let them go.
Well, yeah, certain things having to do with, the fun time I had when I was a kid and so on and so forth. It's good to let all those go. Again, just for those who did very, very, I don't know the word for it, what about, my skills and things like that. That's why I was talking about that. That's a totally different type of function.
And you taught us that a lot of the skills people learn in this realm are useless when it comes to, on the universal real.
Well,
accounting and all those things.
yeah, well, it's functional when you're in the game.
Yeah.
It's useful if you're playing the game. Again, everyone has the right to do what they want to do, really. And if that's, if you want to get, deep in the game and that's where you are, accounting and so on and so forth, all these different things. Yeah, I'm playing the game. These are some of the tools that I use in the game. Nothing wrong with that. You're playing the game. But understanding that beyond this game, that stuff becomes useless. And it's not like, you should separate one, in other words, this realm and then, the other realm. You knock down the walls and you have a certain understanding and balance in how you deal with both sides. So the problem with how things are in this realm is separating things. So the reason, majority of people, not all of them, feel lost is because they've been separated from the memories or the realities of the other realms. Some come in really, really young and don't even have any recollection of the realm before they came into this situation. So I'm going to.
You were talking about, Chief was talking about how memories that you think about all the time, you are giving energy to feed density a lot of the time. And you can see that in the movie Inside Out. There's these memories she calls core memories, and those she gives energy to, and you can see the line of energy going towards what she calls islands. And there are islands in her energy where little amoebas are living, and you can see the little amoebas living on the little islands. Islands like Family Island, Friendship Island, Soccer Island, Hockey Island, Goofball Island, Honesty Island, Island of Personality. And each one has their own contamination. As you can see on the Honesty Island, there were all these like Greek Pantheon buildings and very Western scales of balance, books and stuff.
Yeah, that part. Well, of course, the kid, genetic makeup is Western. So I guess they're saying that because of that, maybe she would be more akin to some, having to do, columns in the Parthenon and so on, as concepts of honesty. Again, this is just, level one interpretation. But again, in some sense, it's troubling if you have a whole mass of individuals watching this from all different, backgrounds, and their concept of honesty has to do with one particular expression from one particular group, then, it's a little dicey, at best. And besides, with these particular memories, they built structures, literally. And one of the things when we have sessions at times, Mrs.A will feel structures in her energy, literally like buildings and things in her energy. And so I will go in, and when I see it, literally, I pull it out of the client, and they definitely resemble buildings. Times when I'm hitting it, they'll crumble like buildings. There's usually inhabitants all throughout it. I think even with the memories, were the amoebas all through that as well?
The memories were they were controlled, like the amoebas would come by and they would suck up any of the memories that Riley was no longer giving energy towards. Right. If they went dim, that means she no longer focused on them, so they would throw them away and they would become they begin to fade. But they didn't disappear. They just became like a junk heap. We found a lot of junk heaps in people's energy.
Yeah, the concept of it fading isn't something I find to be true. And like Mrs.A was saying, that it ends up being thrown into the dump. And there's a scene that has to do with I think Joy and the imaginary friend ending up in this
fell
area.
Into the dump heap. The dump, yeah.
Okay.
Did you want to talk about that, or should we?
No, we'll get there. Yeah. Okay. But having to do with the MCs, if you look at how it's portrayed, she's literally infested with these things, but they play it off as though they have functions. But it's almost like their functions at times, like they couldn't bend to accommodate something that wasn't routine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's another, another one of these signs of density in controlling and influencing another person's life. So if you have a hard time not doing things on a given schedule, and you just sweat bullets because this day I'm supposed to do that, that day I'm supposed to do that, this time I'm supposed to do this, and so on and so forth, and you start to sweat bullets if something happens, for instance, like you're driving somewhere for work or whatever, and a pole drops and cuts off the road, and then you have to figure another way to get to where you gotta go. These things are emblematic, symbolic of just compartmentalized and rigid structure. So, anyway.
You were saying that people or consciousness, these attachments were once consciousness that were balanced. So whatever the process that they went through to become more and more dense caused them to become rigid in the way that they think or the way that they behave. Rigid in anger or rigid in sadness or rigid in fear or disgust. People can become that way as well, very robotic.
Okay, so you were basically saying the MCs are a symbol of that.
Well, the attachments even of sadness, disgust, anger, and fear, they were very set in their way. Anytime they pushed the buttons on the control panel, it always was something that represented them.
Yeah, they were never flexible. That's the other thing about it. And so these emotions, they resemble attachments. They didn't really resemble. No, they didn't resemble. They didn't resemble MCs, but they definitely resembled attachments. Except for the Joy character, which was kind of a quizzle. It took us a little while to actually put that together so that she kind of made sense of her character. But the things like anger, it's as though they had no holistic sense of themselves. So anger behaved angrily, and his way of dealing with anything was going to be, make things worse than better. The other one, fear, and then I didn't even get the thing with what's the one? Disgust. Yeah. And then they try to make it as though she had some viable
Except
reason.
that she keeps her from being not popular or like an social outcast, and keeps her from being poisoned, supposedly.
Which seems very negative in the sense that how is disgust going to keep you from not being popular, other than, okay, you join in with all the little snooty popular kids and turn your nose up at the kids who aren't supposed to be popular. Which seems like disgust is just basically another way to turn someone into an a-hole, really. So that one, yeah, I just, it just was puzzled. I think, how did he even come up with that? Or they're just trying to say that being snooty is, it's a cool thing. But it almost reminds me a little bit of Soul when they were going into those rooms or whatever.
Oh, right.
And then they, one was aloof and so on, self-absorbed and so on.
Yeah.
All these useless, expressions. And disgust is totally a useless expression. As well as anger is a useless expression, and fear is a useless expression. The sadness is, is something that happens when it has to, when things are out of whack. So if things aren't out of whack, none of these expressions are needed. So you don't need fear, you don't need, disgust, you don't need anger. What was the other one? You don't really need sadness.
Sadness, disgust, anger, fear. That's
what. Okay, so it's the 5 of those guys.
Yeah.
So in balance, none of these individuals, none of those who were at the control panel needed to be there. And what's really interesting when Joy gets sucked into this tube thing because of sadness, everything goes to hell. So in reality, it's like these guys are nothing more than attachments. Because the one entity that was keeping things balanced was her. So when she got removed from the equation, all of a sudden, everything goes downhill. It's like the kid can't bring up a rational thought for her life. So it literally was saying that the attachments were thinking for this kid all the way through.
And you want to look
Except
at
for
this?
Joy, but anyway. Well, Joy was thinking for it too, but anyway.
Kid, is it okay? How much % of the time are attachments speaking or thinking for people?
Depends on the person.
Depends on the person, but
Yeah,
on average.
on the average, but it depends on the person as to how often their density talks. I would say probably upwards of 80% of the time. So that's just on the average. When you're trying to figure something out, then you hear voices in the back of your head trying to tell you to do, a multitude of things. When probably the initial thought that came up was probably the one that was depending again as to whether you are just totally controlled by density or not. You're controlled by density or not. So someone who's kind of flitting back and forth, their density pops up, or the MCs, or what I call them pigeons, start talking and saying all kinds of weird stuff. Or pigeons usually blow you up to the point where you're going to just crash and fall, or you end up in the psych ward. But again, where was I?
I can go off in a different way.
With okay, let's see where you're going to go.
Okay, so there's also they try to say that these attachments, fear, sadness, all came from like experiences that Riley had. But there's many other ways you can get attachments. Sometimes attachments are maybe where she lives at her house, and then they jump on her. Or the attachments can come from the parents. The attachments can come from a past expression that she had. And also there's those who are connected externally. They're not necessarily like right in the command center where the control panel is. They're like controlling like a puppeteer, like through Bluetooth. There's a lot of people who are controlled in that way. Is that true, Chief?
Yeah, there's external, again, nothing is like totally chiseled in stone. It's like, again, because of the difference in people. But the average is everyone is contaminated in this realm, and they're contaminated by very similar things. But how they play out depends, So what you're saying, yeah, there can be the external, which I call the puppet masters, who will pull, who will pull the strings. Sometimes the attachments are like the minor workers down there, while the string puller is pulling strings. He wants this to happen or that to happen, and those attachments will go about whatever way that they feel will work, will go about making something happen. 9 times out of 10, it's usually nothing good.
And this movie actually addresses density that controls the host, which is Riley, from a distance, like from Bluetooth, because they call them the writers.
Oh, the guys, no.
The writers were the one who wrote these weird dreams.
Okay.
Because even Joy was like, who is writing these dreams? They're torturing Riley. She already had a bad day at school, and then they're just bringing it up again.
Yeah.
And is there anything else you want to say?
No.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you. And then also there was definitely, they did a good job in this movie of portraying how much attachments usually speak for people. A lot of times people assume that they're actually talking to your mom or your dad or your cousin or your friend, but like you said,
Anyway,
on average, 80% of the time you're not talking to them.
Well, yeah, they did show up quite well when she was, just losing her mind and being irritable because the other useless attachments, all they knew how to do was just cause a problem. So when the mom wanted to find out what was going on with her, and Joy's not there to control everything. These guys are being really like snooty, being angry, being nasty, to the parents. And actually, it's kind of interesting because they show the attachments of the parents as well. And one of the things I found about the parents is just weak as shit.
Yeah, the foot was time out.
Yeah, the foot thing. When I first watched it, it's like, okay, what's this foot thing? What's he gonna?
The foot is coming down. Like, what's the foot?
Yeah, what wasn't my
time out?
Well, it wasn't my mother's foot or my father's foot that I recall. That foot was weak as her room, I said, oh, okay, wow. If I was told to go to my room, I was like, I'm good, you know.
Yeah.
But again, it was interesting because a lot of what Mrs.A was saying having to do with MCs, getting MCs from parents and so on, a certain way of behaving and not being checked has to do with, the adults who are around her supposedly, raising her. So as far as this kid, being that, raised two kids, her behavior would not have been tolerated by me at all. So, in other words, these guys literally gave her the room to behave badly, even though it was her attachments doing all this talking. One of the things I remember growing up, they would talk about some kids when it was around maybe 8, 9, or 10 or whatever. And that kid's crazy. Oh, that kid's really crazy down there. And my mom said, oh, you see how crazy it is if you back his ass up to the corner and, lay him down, then all of a sudden the crazy goes away. So even as far as like their attachments, the attachments can be trained also. To not step, step to the fore if they know that, the hammer is going to come down, it's going to come down in a serious way, not this go to your room crap. So I've trained others having to do with kids getting attachments or actually having possession, means possessing, and that's what attachments do. It's like a mild possessing. Everyone walks around with a mild possession, really, if they haven't been doing this work. When I get rid of the attachments, I get rid of the possession, but then we have to work on the MCs. The things that you remember, the little voices that come up and want you to reminisce, which means fertilizing the little spores so that they can try to bloom again and start to influence your life. So I was going somewhere with that before I got off on, other than the parents not being very good parents.
Well, we did get an interesting question. She said, I was wondering why a children's movie is promoting running away from home. The girl didn't even have that bad of a home situation. And is there a reason why they picked the emotions that they did for the movie?
Well, I totally agree with that. That kid didn't have a bad life, and literally they will promote things that are going to cause a problem. I remember some decades ago, they had these TV shows where there's a couple kids and the parents. And for some reason, they've always portrayed the parents as idiots. And the kids are always just blowing the parents off. Oh, you don't know anything. Oh, so this is something that's very yin, because they like chaos. They don't want things to go smoothly. So if you're curious about that, it's by design. It's not by accident. It's not because these guys are, they're idiots, but the fact is they're idiots with a goal. And so when you see something like that, it's there on purpose. It's not by accident. It's, and you're sitting there with your logical mind saying, what's up with this kid? I know what hard knocks is. And this kid don't have hard knocks.
Yeah.
The kids don't have a roof over their head, but this kid's tripping out because of whatever,
It's not a gingerbread house.
Yeah, right.
Or a castle with a dragon.
Well, that again too, they were doing, supporting this type of fantasy imagining kind of nonsense. And I don't know, I remember when I was a kid, I may have done it once, because I don't remember really doing it, where you try to imagine what something is going to be like. And so, they're moving, the kids, all kids have an issue when it comes to moving. Most kids, I should say, have some kind of issue. But this kid is sitting there and fantasizing about what the house is going to look like, and the attachments are busy yapping and yapping and yapping. How about a gingerbread house? How about some other ridiculous nonsense? How about this? How about that? When they show up, it's this little small house, in between two larger houses, and doesn't match anything that has to do with what she was imagining. Then she starts to feel bummed about that. Again, that's still a spoiled kid, but she still starts to feel bummed about that, and then everything else ensues. This nonsense with this with sadness.
Yeah. They have examples of her like anger and sadness cause, or sadness in general, like having a tantrum in the store,
Right.
or crying about the ice cream falling off, or throwing a fit about a seatbelt.
Yeah, just overreacting about everything, literally, is what the character was doing. They were trying to redeem that character throughout the movie, you know. But anyway,
yeah, and none of the examples were very good reason to keep it around. But that's what the insanity of this realm is, to try to promote something that's very useless as useful.
yeah, something illogical. All of a sudden, they try to make it, you know, logical, and it always, you know, if you think logically, truly logical. Some individuals I had asked about logical thinking, and they said numbers. And that's not what I'm talking about. You know, logical thinking is actually looking at things in a way where does it seem balanced to me in a holistic sense? How do I feel when I look at that? How do I feel when I hear certain things? So when I talk about logic, it's not about numbers. You know, one and ones, twos, and so on and so forth. That I don't even know how certain individuals even they call it logistics, I guess, maybe because it's logistics or something, but it's not what I consider to be logic. And even if I take it even further, I say universal logic, which goes beyond this, where we are, beyond this realm, where we are. Thoughts about, well, just in general, you know, I'm just going to leave that word, you know, because I feel like I'm going to just end up like out in the wilderness with no way to go back. So anyway, yeah, you can talk about the control panel. Now, her control panel, what happened to it, morph or something like that?
Yeah, so interesting enough, Chief, during sessions with many of the clients, Chief has,
We're not going to talk about that.
No.
Okay.
What Chief has, you know, when Chief looks into people's energy, he can see all kinds of things. Like whenever he was saying that there are structures built in people's energy, it's not a joke, you know, the hockey island and everything. People have built homages to their hobbies. And not only physically, because you've seen people who will build like an homage of trophies. Like it looks like they make fun of people in Asian cultures or Middle Eastern cultures where they, you know, built altars, right, to some kind of deity. But they have an altar to themselves with all these trophies.
Yeah, they have altars to themselves. They have altars for rock stars. They have altars to actors. They have, you know, the West is talking about full altar creation.
And then they look down on others and say, "Oh, we don't do that," but oh, yes, you do.
Yeah, you do it in more ways than one. So, so we were getting to
just keep going.
Yeah.
So, for example, other things that Chief has observed is in people's minds there is a control panel, and like Chief said, 80% on average, 80% of the time you're talking to people's attachments. That means that person is not in the driver's seat. They're not in control of their mind. Oh, there's a large, you want to say percentage of people who are not in control of their own mind?
But I would say, well, I think most of us never hadn't thought about that as far as like numbers.
Sorry.
But,
this is coming random.
all right. Folks, we respond to numbers. I say like 50% of the people on the planet really are basically programs and running a program. Not unlike a robot, but they do have overseers or called the puppet masters. So some folks, their control panel is on autopilot. So I can talk to them about certain things. And they'll go, yeah. But after the sessions and talking, come back next session, they're still in the same place almost that they were before. It's just that I put some cracks in, in the control panel. But again, there's so many things to deal with when I'm dealing with sessions. But again, that's how one of the things that can happen with the control panel, things can take over. And literally, I've had enough experience where I've run into these people, and I've had some even in the family,
Yes.
you know, who are just give over control to someone else, to attachments to the puppet master. And a lot of times it'll happen different ways. One of the ways is something telling a person that they're great, you're the greatest, and no one understands that you're so great. You know, and you're sitting in your little room feeling like no one understands me, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, but you haven't really done anything that shows that you even have a certain kind of talent, but they're sitting there with this thought that I'm great, I'm great, I'm great, just for the hell of saying I'm great. Sometimes they use things like where I've had to stop telling certain people about past expressions, where there's a number of folks who've done some other things that are, you know, pretty interesting and even intense in past expressions before they got totally damaged. So if I would tell someone like that who's running this type of program, who's listening to the pigeons, that you were this and you did this in that particular lifetime, that person will all of a sudden, this, you know, validates me, the chief validates me, therefore I am this, and I said, well, you're not that person, that's an expression, now you're damaged. But I don't want to hear that, I am, and then they go out and risk being thrown into this insane asylum. And some get thrown into the mental ward behind it because they so much want this illusion to be real. So that.
So as you can see in the movie Inside Out, as when she was a baby, when Riley was a baby, the control panel was like this little stalk and then a little ball with a button. And then as she got older and older, the control panel gets bigger and bigger. And as you can see in her control panel, most of the time Joy is running the control panel in controlling her mind, really, most of the time. But as you can see, like in the mother's attachments in her mind, Sadness was the boss. And Sadness told Joy what to do, what buttons to push. And you can see that all the attachments were sitting at the control panel. So it's showing how much of control the person is being controlled by certain attachments and who's the lead.
Yeah. And even when they switch over, we talked about this before, that usually in the beginning of some of the sessions I have with people, just to give them a clue as to what they're looking at, what they're dealing with in this world. It's like, have you ever talked to someone or know someone that you'll talk to for a while and they seem just fine, and then maybe a certain word or a subject, or you just turn your back and you turn back around and it's as though you're talking to a totally different person. So these attachments in the movie exemplify that, as far as I'm concerned. When they take over, or when, you know, the father can't figure out why is this kid telling me to get lost or whatever, when normally this kid just does what I tell him to do, because something else has taken over the control.
Some clients, they'd have three sections of their control panel, but the section that was theirs is now deadened. It's covered in black ooze. It's off, turned off, or on autopilot. And on the left, they're controlled by random people who are convincing, or on the right, they're controlled by family. So sometimes people you'll see that are scatterbrained, or they have a very short attention span. It's because they don't have control of their own mind.
Yeah, and also with what was going on in her head with these attachments, so-called emotions, they were, sometimes they were fighting for control.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they just didn't want to, and they said, "You do it." That kind of behavior. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a really good movie to explore how the consciousness, the weirdness of the consciousness, I would just say, because they're talking about here's how the consciousness works. No. Even if you watch any of these science, what we call documentaries or whatever, talking about the human body and the nervous system and all this stuff, it's very archaic the way they talk about it. And I look at that stuff over the years, and I've looked at it over the years, and in the end, I just like chuck it, because it doesn't help the person to have these concepts of how the nervous system works, or the left and the right side of the brain and all this kind of nonsense. And the good thing about being around a bit for a while myself, I paid attention to that stuff. I read all that stuff. I watched the documentaries and all that stuff, and find that it's just literally another way of getting you to chase your tail. They don't want you to really learn anything, so they give you a bunch of things that don't work. But I have individuals like, oh yeah, that's some left brain thinking, that's a right brain thinking, and even when they were doing that, there's a part of me that just had a resistance to it. I just couldn't, it's like, look, it goes. What I know, it goes a lot deeper than just left and right side. Then we start to get into attachments, and then it's like, whoa.
Yeah, and you said that you actually don't need, the brain is the center of programming. You think with your consciousness, you shouldn't think with your brain.
Yeah, it's a filter basically. And so that's how individuals get, controlled, sound control, brainwash, all these particular things that the system targets the head. And they're targeting, literally, it's like a computer chip or something like that, really, is what they're targeting, which is not really all that organic. Well, I shouldn't say it's not organic. It can change in ways, but generally not for the better. If anything, you get praised if you're more of a robot. Mm. So someone is academic, and they get all and I've had those in the family too. On the not dean's list, but on the honor roll through high school, dean's list through college, and so on and so forth, and then they get rewarded for being able to regurgitate this stuff. And over the years, I've talked to some individuals who I know intimately about, who had this kind of experience. And the one told me that she had a photographic memory, that she didn't really remember any of the things, but she could actually go through the book, commit it to memory, and when the test came in her mind, she sees herself leafing through the book. And she was always an AB student, all the way through school, all the way through college. So again.
Chief has also talked about when people reset. I thought that this movie gave a good example about that. Like you would see in Riley's head when the attachments were like fighting to figure out who would be the one to use the control panel, that Riley would just pause at times. And you see that in people. Like sometimes I would tell the mother unit something that I thought that about existence, maybe about aliens or something just that didn't have to do with Christianity, and you'd see her eyes kind of cross or her head kind of shake, and then she'd start changing the subject, or she'll just start the subject that we were just talking about right before our conversation. And you can watch people and they will reset.
Yeah.
Especially if you talk about things that are too complicated for them, maybe something Neo Shamanic, and you test it on them, and they'll like error because they're something in their mind is their attachments are playing around.
Well, one even similar one is an individual that I met some years, not that many years ago, maybe about 3-4 years ago, and this person was kind of they consider themselves a bit of a gamer, and she perceived me because I was a male, that she could say certain things from a female point of view or behavior, and I, as a classic male, would not be able to catch what she was doing, because a lot of guys are programmed not to catch certain things. And so she would throw it at me, then I would just take it, and I would spin it around and throw it back at her, and she would do this thing with like that, and like that, and that's a reset. Because she was expecting me to fall into a category of what she had anticipated from I guess the men that she knew in her life. She could run this number, which had to do with control, literally what it was. She was trying to do a control number on me, but I could understand, I could figure it out. Also, I grew up with 5 sisters.
She tried to insult you and you threw one back at her. And then she reset with her eyeball, her eyes.
Yeah, I'm gonna say seen it more. Yeah, I've been on the scene when it's happened, and a number of times with an individual. But again, that's another form of resetting when someone is assuming that okay, you're Asian and Asian people are like this. So I'm going to say some derogatory Asian thing, and then, and in their mind, they don't think it's anything, because this is, it's common knowledge from where I come from. This is what Asians are about. And then that particular Asian person just throws it around and hits them in the, right between the eyes with it, because they've grown up, pretty much in the similar type of environment that the other person has grown up in. And then they have to reset. A lot of times they'll reset, some will reset and they'll just disappear, you never see them again. Some, they're just kind of like gluttons for punishment, depending on what, whether it's you're working with them or whatever. So anyway, yeah, you can go ahead. Because anyway, that's literally how, a few of the ways how reset, how it looks when somebody's resetting.
And when I was talking about how some people's control panels in their mind are totally calcified. It's on autopilot, it's set in one mode, and it's going to stay like that unless Chief gets in there and breaks shit up, which is quite an interesting experience. But you can see that it's portrayed in this movie. Whenever she's about to run away, the attachments put an idea in her mind, and then the whole control panel goes black. So it's only set to like one concept. And some people, their mind is set to just run into walls constantly. Like some people would think, why don't they just avoid that situation? They always fall into the same trap. It's because they're on autopilot.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where the mind is set into autopilot. And one of the things I will do once I see that that's what's going on, I can go in and literally just like fracture it and break it apart. And then put the healthiest aspect of that person's consciousness in the driver's seat. Now, someone say, oh, you can do that tomorrow. No. You do it, but there's all this other stuff running around. So we're talking about the amoebas, who are the MCs, and so on and so forth. So in some ways, let's say Joy was a more viable person to control, which in the movie, that's literally what her role was. Mm-hmm. She was the one who should be at the controls. But when something happens and, she can't be at the controls, everything falls apart. The reality, what I'm doing is all of the little amoebas and MCs and the attachments and so on and so forth, and the one that got her, kind of lost out of the control system in the first place, sadness, if they're not there, things move smoothly.
It was really funny how well in the movie Inside Out portrayed some of the other people and the attachments in their mind. So for some people, like there was this angry bus driver, he had no joy. He had no character called joy. They were all anger. There was like no fear, no
different colors, but
no disgust, all different colors, but all hot-headed anger.
Yeah. And
then there was like they even did an example for like a dog or a cat, because animals can get attachments too.
Yeah, I know that for a fact. But now, if you want to take it a little bit further, or we want to start answering some questions, because we're kind of like
we already kind of in the middle of it now. Answered every question except for one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Moving along. What is the?
What's the last?
Oh, the one having to do with the imaginary
friend. Yes.
Yeah. And you can read that quote.
Okay. Sure. So the question was mostly talking about, we had to rephrase it so that it could be used in the forum. But your ideas about what is an imaginary friend, where does it come from, is it viable, what really is an imaginary friend?
So, concept of imaginary friend, and I might have spoken about it before briefly in another forum maybe, where children, when they come in, they are still pretty much connected to the other side for, I should say, maybe the first 4 years. And it depends on the kid also. Some go a lot further, like my daughter, which I supported her being aware of the other side when she was a little kid, so she never really lost it. But a lot of kids will lose it behind this imaginary friend business when it comes to the parents. The kids are generally seeing what they're seeing. If there's something there and they're saying, I'm talking to this person, 9 times out of 10, they're talking to they're actually talking to some consciousness, that someone's in their room or whatever. Some kids will use it as a means to, get out of trouble. So they'll blame things on something else. But again, there nine times out of 10, if something goes weird, and the kid says, and they're just really animate about it, that I didn't do this other thing, or they usually have the name of the individual or the thing that they're talking to did it. Don't be so quick to just poo-poo it, because the reality of the matter, 9 times out of 10, there is something going on. So imaginary friends are not really imaginary, and even some of you guys and clients have had experience with their child talking to something, but because of sessions and in my involvement in your family life, you realize that she is talking to something, and you'll just say, okay, who are you talking to? My friends, and say, those aren't your friends.
Did you contain them?
Yeah, did you contain them? So if there's a little kid talking about an imaginary friend, teach them containment.
Or have a session.
Really. Yes.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, everything. I can definitely say all of everything that Chief has just said, we have experienced firsthand here.
Yeah. And thank you, Lucy, for sharing that. Yeah, because I didn't want to bring your name up. So, but it's happened with some of the other, some other people who are on the forums with their kids. And it gets kind of weird with depending on the parents, because again, whatever's behind their control panel can be a problem to a child that they're raising, and especially if that kid has some sensitivity. And we do have had in the past, because one person's kind of like on the periphery right now, but we've had some issues where a parent literally would be coming to me for me to grandize them or something like that, and then they bring their kid, and their kid is like more sensitive also, because kids is still pretty young, and the kid's more sensitive, and we'll end up with a situation where that person is literally attacking their child on a very psychic level. So anyway, I don't know if that's going to help anything, but that does happen from time to time. And if you know of some kids and you can sense that, and actually after enough sessions anyway, and majority of you guys have opened up as far as like your empath abilities have gotten stronger and so on. So you can trust when you sense something going on with with people or even with children. For me, yeah, I have a little bit of a soft spot there. If a kid just genuinely a kid like trying to figure out what's going on, and they're not a little brat or whatever, yeah, I'll try to make them realize at a very young age, don't believe when your parents tell you that you're crazy, or that this thing you see isn't real, it's imaginary. It can get a little touchy, because if the parent's sitting there while you're talking to them, you can have a little bit of a problem on your hands. But anyway, with that, we're going to just move on.
Okay, yes. So, for example, with the imaginary friend, this imaginary friend had like all these like different pieces of animals as like one entity. And you were saying that imaginary friends can typically be attachments?
Yeah, they can be attachments. A lot of times they are attachments, My daughter, hers was, I think he was an attachment, but she ended up having an argument with it. And she was preschool at the time. And she had, in other words, he told her his name, and he would show up, and they would go and do things together. And when she would go to bed, she said she didn't just fall asleep. She just felt herself come out of her body and then just start spinning around. And the next thing you know, she was in this other place with this imaginary friend. And and I said, okay, yeah, I believe it. And she told me, I said, yeah. There's no reason for me to not believe that. I said, just tell me what he tells you to do and what you guys do. And it's kind of benign stuff, running around fishing and things and so on and so forth. And they had this falling out because she wanted to go somewhere and he wanted to do something else. And she said, well,
I remember the
you remember the details of it?
Well, because density is density, and they always work for someone. This guy was actually opposing as an imaginary friend to try to convince Nami to do something that his masters wanted him to do to her, or to get her to to
Do to
go along
herself,
with,
primarily.
do to herself.
Yeah.
Or just go along with him to somewhere, or do some things that would
Mhm.
weaken her. But she decided not to, and that's when he got all upset,
Mhm.
because he's getting pressure from the density that was his masters on him to get her to do whatever they wanted, and didn't work out.
Yeah, and I supported, both of the kids thinking for themselves. So it wasn't like she felt because he presented himself older that he had to do what she had, she had to do what he wanted her to do because he presented himself as older. I remember when I was growing up, there was this situation in some of the communities where I was growing up, where some of the older folks felt that they should be able to, in other words, give you a spanking if you did something they didn't think was cool. But they didn't know, my mom. My mom said, don't touch my kids. You tell me what's going on, then I'll do the discipline. But even as far as like my late brother, when he was really little, he had an interaction, let's say, with an imaginary, what they would call an imaginary, being that convinced him to jump from a banister to the ground floor because my mom was throwing laundry, down from the second floor down to the first floor, and then to take it down to the basement to wash. So he's looking there, and something tells him to jump, and he did.
And he missed.
And he missed he missed the clothes, which freaked her out. And I tell you, being a parent, it ain't easy. Seriously. So he's laying there, not breathing, and she's like, because she was, what alarmed her was the thud. She comes up and he's just laying there, eyes rolled back, motionless, not breathing. And then I think she said she just like slapped his face, and then he said, started breathing again. And like, what the hell is wrong with you? But the thing is, with him, I think it was even so much that the thing talked to him, other than perhaps it got inside of him. And kids, and that happens with children as well. Yeah. So when we talk about imaginary friends, yeah, they exist. It's best, have the sessions. And if you know how to do containment, you contain.
When you were talking about how people's minds are like Swiss cheese,
Mm-hmm.
that's why containment is essential all the time, because of all the holes that density has tricked people into creating for them. That's what chakras are all about, is getting you to create an opening for them. They offer you an idea. Why don't you make us a home? Oh, all right, I'll make Hockey Island for you. How about that? Yeah, good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
No, when you brought up the chakra thing again, and it's interesting because the more I delve into it, the more I see the proof of what of that information that I got having to do with the chakras. Was a person just recent new client, and I said, okay, wow, your chest area really looks like it's been someone's shooting arrows after arrow after arrow after arrow right into her chest like this.
It
like,
hurt.
and Mrs.A and Catherine, really ached. And I said, okay, do you believe in chakras? She said, yes, of course I believe in chakras. Everybody does, And I said, well, you created a doorway. This is density telling you how to create a doorway for them to have access. And they always talk about the heart chakra anyway. That seems to be their favorite. And that seems to be the area they like to attack the most. So with that, I told that information, and I proceeded to just like pull like tons and tons of arrows, you might as well say, out of that area, and still didn't get everything, mind you. But those who say, chakras, what do you mean by that? I checked them, very little's going on there other than, they have this feeling in their chest, but never quite as, I should say, toxed or contaminated or attacked on the same level as someone who believes in some of these, things like, I having a hard time thinking of the other ones, but other than just chakras, the concept of kundalini, and some of that I think where people were trying to impress me by using these terms and so on. But kundalini is just like the energy highway, what I call the energy highway. And the way that they looked at it was basically prescribed by density, how to look at the kundalini, or even when we attack, or I attack the whole concept of meditation. And after talking to various different people, I find out, yeah, what I'm saying about that is true too. Again, it's better to do containment or just do some of these exercises that I show you. Will do you a hell of a lot more good and clear your mind a lot better than sitting and opening myself up to who knows what in the universe.
You were referring to the train of thought, Chief, and it was like infested with those amoeba-shaped entities, and they fit best as described as a mere consciousnesses. And it was showing like she couldn't even have a thought that wasn't influenced by density.
Yeah, or affected, but what was the thing that had to do with abstract thought?
Oh, abstract thought, sure.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, go ahead with that.
So whenever joy and sadness get sucked up in this tube, and they end up going to where there's all the long-term memories and as well as Chief said, that memories from past expressions, they end up there and they're trying to get back to headquarters, and Joy is trying.
She runs into the
imaginary friend
guy, yeah.
And he says, "Why don't you I know a shortcut," and then he takes them through.
Well, actually, he says, "I know a shortcut," and Joy's like, "Cool," because sadness was becoming extremely useless. She said, "I can't walk," and so she's dragging this.
Joy's dragging her.
And so she's looking for a shortcut, and this guy's saying, "Yeah, I got a shortcut," and sadness goes, "Well, that's dangerous," to go through. Abstract thought, in the realm of abstract thought. It's really dangerous. I read the books, and it's really dangerous to go through there. So it's like, well, the imaginary friend, he's been in and out. He says, "Yeah, this is fine. I've been back and forth all the time." But then something happens, right? When I guess during the breakdown, and things get activated in the abstract thought realm. But you had the definitions of abstract thought that totally contradict what they were trying to get across in this movie.
Yes. So when we looked up the abstract thought, we looked at some of the positive definitions. Of course, density is not going to ever give you some kind of straight definition that's going to be totally positive.
Yeah, you got to get a bunch of them.
Yeah, you got to get a bunch of them and then read through it and see what you can get. So abstract thought, positive, the attributes are thinking that is coherent and logical, thinking about how everything relates to the bigger picture, the ability to think about objects, principles, and ideas that are not physically present.
Yeah, so what's so dangerous about that? Actually, I think that's quite positive.
It's quite positive, and it's really interesting because in the movie Inside Out, they're showing that abstract thought is literally, it looks locked down in like a metal prison. Like density doesn't want you to think about anything that they haven't given you a prescribed thought to create or to make or to think.
Yeah, and it was interesting that they did have, like, as you said, a metal
metal
casings around it, which does exemplify what density is about. They don't want you to know anything. They don't want abstract thought. They don't want logical thinking. So this kid is, sadness, by reading the books, she's believing that this is a dangerous place to go into. But then they do this number, and then they make it kind of dangerous because of what's breaking down in the kid's head. And I forgot what happened, where all of a sudden everything kind of like started moving around.
They made it dangerous because they compartmentalized it or Palladianized it by cutting your thoughts into segments, like Chief said, fragmenting a consciousness, breaking down a consciousness, compartmentalizing the consciousness into 4 stages.
Right, yeah, that's true.
So how can you have an original thought if you are going by a prescribed method of thinking?
Yeah, it's like you have to go in from one room to the next room, and I probably explained how tunnel vision or linear thinking is. It's like tunnel vision. You're just looking through this, and then when you move to this, you don't remember this. Then you focus on this. And I remember when I was in school, if you thought creatively to some of the lazy teachers, this, how is it that this doesn't connect with that when, in order to get this to happen, they said, well, we're just talking about this. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about these other things. And so they lock logical, critical thinking down. And I think even with the 4 stages, they had something where there's some other thought processes that should have been, they should have been just unified. There shouldn't have been any walls or separate buildings. Even the train of thought shouldn't have been separated.
Yeah, they had cabooses and things like that.
Yeah.
And infested with
infested with MCs. Yeah.
And what was interesting, Chief, I don't know, maybe you might agree, but it was as if they showed in the movie Inside Out, the abstract thought had been locked down each expression, because it was like box after box after box after box that was metallic.
Yeah, in this
and it
kid.
went off into the past.
Yeah, so what else? She told me 12 or something like
Yeah.
that. So 12-year-olds got all this ancient memory and so on and so forth. So I don't know if they were alluding to their belief in past expressions, but it sure as hell looked that way.
And the people who probably wrote it, maybe they wouldn't really think about it that way, but they don't know that what's influencing why they drew it the way they drew it.
Yeah, a lot of things are written and individuals think that they're being original when the information is being fed into their heads. So there are times when it's interesting, some folks struggle with originality. So if their original thought goes against concepts of the system, they don't get any play for it, or there are people who just, I can't figure out what the hell you're talking about. But what they're thinking, if I listen to what they're talking about, I can actually follow the logic behind it, but because it doesn't go along with the system, it's ignored, or it's put down, or you're just told that your thoughts are crazy. Now, some people have some weird ass thoughts, but again, that's the thing having to do with learning, dealing with the Neo Shamanism, being able to tap more into your ability to empath things will help you decipher when a thought is coming from something external or when that thought is actually something that's coming from your own higher consciousness and your own logic.
Chief, you have a popular post on Instagram called "Forget Finding Your Inner Child, Find Your Higher Consciousness."
Oh yeah, I think it's
something like that.
I posted that like a couple years ago.
Yes. Did you want me to read the descriptions of inner child or?
Yeah. Well, I guess we're moving into inner child because this is a kid. That the movie's revolved around. But yeah, you can go ahead and read that.
What's the meaning of inner child? Because Chief was also talking about how density will get you to compartmentalize your own mind by creating things that someone else is prescribing for you to create in your energy. For example, the inner child. And then density will hijack that thought and use it to sabotage.
Yeah, we'll send you on a wild goose chase.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of folks, and even just recently someone was saying that inner child business has been, kind of popular. But I heard about that back in freaking late 70s, early 1980s. And again, I weigh what I know and what I know to be true for myself by observing things over a period of time. And I've observed this concept of inner child, and it doesn't work. And it will be someone who's struggling with certain things, and probably the density or whatever is in them, their attachments or something, or MC may tell them not to tell me that they believe in this inner child nonsense. So we'll be going along and along and along, and sometimes folks, want me to do, the mind reader, crystal ball person. That's not who I am. I deal with things that are the most prominent. But then you find out that the root to the crap has to do with the number of thoughts, like those five emotions or whatever. Yeah. Not 5 emotions. What is it? The 5.
The attachments, joy, and disgust.
Yeah, but they had 5 key memories or something like that.
Oh, 5 core memories.
5 core memories or whatever.
Yeah,
or things that they picked up and their attachments or their MCs grasped onto it.
Oh, yeah, they won't tell you about those 5 core.
No, they won't tell me about the other 5 core things, or even certain individuals who were practicing witchcraft, and I'm going by, okay, why would you want to sabotage yourself? So I'm not going to look places at times. I mean, I've had to start doing that. But I figure if you want to help yourself, why lie to me? But understanding that means that their seeds are very, very alive and well, or get rid of attachments, they can go out and find themselves another one. So it's like a vacancy sign goes up and they don't do the containment and so on. And so, more attachments show up with their luggage, say like a room, they say, oh yeah, we have a room full, we have an available vacancy. When I'm teaching you is to like, no new guests. Lock your hotel down, no new guests. So anyway.
Yes. So people like even the inner child. Whenever I notice that with people who think that being childlike is very positive, there's a lot of things that they hold themselves back in the past by nurturing this concept. So I'll read it to you.
Okay.
It says, what's the meaning of inner child? This is just a random Google search. You can do it on your own too. In popular psychology, if you contain it, is really helpful. In popular psychology and analytical psychology, the inner child is an individual's childlike aspect. It includes what a person learned as a child before puberty. The inner child is often conceived as a semi-independent sub-personality subordinate to the waking conscious mind. They pretty much describe an attachment, but
yeah.
it was very interesting.
Yeah.
And they're saying that healing your inner child then focuses on uncovering and releasing the causes for the childlike aspects of your personality so you can react to challenges in your adult life as an adult rather than a kid. Mm-hmm. The good news, healing your inner child can feel a lot like self-care.
Yeah, it's almost like calming yourself. To me, it exemplifies, I'm comforting myself with, where we use the term whoopee, with my security blanket, and I suck my thumb in the corner. That's literally what it amounts to in my head when it comes to this inner child nonsense. Again, it talks about going backwards. What I talk about is moving forward. Now, you can see the effects of something in the past, but I'm always talking about let it go, get rid of it. So when we talked about individuals trying to recapture, these great and fun moments in the past, it never works if you try to go backwards and try to recapture something that's already passed. So with this inner child thing, here you've had all these experiences as an adult that aren't childlike, and you're supposed to walk back there like a wide-eyed, naive little kid, and do what? Contaminate that thought? So it's just another form of hiding from your higher consciousness. And density wants you to hide from your higher consciousness because, what's better to control than a child in most cases? Why does the military go after, 16, 17, 18-year-olds? Because they're young. They've only had so much experience.
We had a client that was literally an adult, but when Chief looked into his energy, he was a child in his mind. Mm-hmm. A child, and around him were 5 other attachments holding him up by their shoulders. So this kid,
by his shoulder,
yeah, by his shoulders, yeah. Mm-hmm. This little visual of a child never walked on its own. It was mm-hmm. always led around by its attachments, very much like the Inside Out. Mm-hmm. And
well, most kids really don't feel like they have any power, And I know, as a kid, you growing up, you got parents, they call the shots, depending on what kind of family you grew up in. But mine grew up, mother, father, they called the shots. I never felt like I had any independence really. And it wasn't that much of a problem. They weren't the worst people, I did grow up, but one of the things that goes on when you're a kid, you don't have any control. Someone else is calling the shots for you. I had control over, over my life when I was a kid, shit, I've never gone to school. So that's another one of these things that New Age comes up with, and this comes from actually psychology. I don't know if it's Carl Jung, that particular concept, or I don't know, or Freud. I don't think it was Freud, but it was like Carl Jung, and that that concept. And then they take, that's one of the things about New Age. It takes stuff from all over the place, and they just put it side by side by side. But none of it actually coalesces or is cohesive. None of it really goes along with the other thing. So again, the inner child is about going backwards, and not thinking in terms of how you really felt when you were a kid. What are you supposed to do? All of a sudden, okay, I'm an independent little guy. Be an independent big person.
So some of the examples of that may be like, for example, I liked glitter. I liked glitter a lot before, and I thought simply that glitter was pretty, and that's why I liked it. But I realized that I found comfort in glitter, and that comfort has to do with some of the traumatic things, the traumatic environment that I lived in as a kid. And I tried to like appease myself with glitter even as I grew older. So if you can think of some things that you learned to like or you liked that when you were a kid and you still do, some people, they still find comfort in stuffed animals or things like that. And that can show you some of the things that you still have that are very childlike. Or just ask Chief, is there anything in my energy that's very childlike? Are there some memories from my childhood that I think that I've gotten over, but I haven't really? What should I do? And that'd probably be the best way, because some people just assume I'm 40 years old, I'm 30 years old, I can't be childlike. Look how old I am.
Yeah, when they never grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Again, one of the things I don't like about the New Age is like one size fits all. So say you're going into your inner child thing, there's a lot of kids who would prefer to still be taken care of by their parents. So what you were talking about, the glitter, some of that had to do with someone not wanting you to grow up. And I don't know if I'm not going to speak for you as far as like, well, in other words, when you were dealing with the glitter or the wonderment thing we were talking about, this basically just to hide, you said, from the intensity of
I felt like a lot of the situation that I had when I was growing up was very ugly. I mean, a lot of the children that were in the cult somehow were male. They're all little boys, and they would want to play games with me like Mercy, where you bend your fingers back until you feel pain. But I left that in the past, but I still had this feeling like I would just ignore the things that they would try to do by looking at something pretty, or like, oh, look, a flower or a butterfly, even in the church parking lot. I'm miserable, but I'm like trying to entertain myself by jumping from parking lot, concrete block, just jumping along and trying to just make a game for myself while everyone is just, doing the church things. Or if people were hanging out, I try to run away. And Chief is saying that wonderment about like, I wonder how many, clouds are in the sky today. I wonder how, I always say that.
And that was more of their, being into that inner child business. And also you said that in the end, there were certain things that as an adult that you needed to know that was being kind of like blocked, or they would just insist, certain older individuals would insist on doing these things rather than you learn for yourself.
Yes, and I would ask them, I was like, please teach me how to buy groceries, please teach me how to, do checks and balances, do all these things. And on one hand, they teach me some things, but then on the other hand, they would chide me and like, you're so childish. Well, I'm asking you to teach me how to freaking grow up.
Well, yeah, I mean, as part of that, too, when you're doing this inner child business and you're doing it around people who aren't doing the work, that's just them, they say, they can smell the child. So they'll start to manipulate the child. Again, it's, I would even go as far as like, it's dangerous to even just think that way, really. It doesn't do you any good. Find your higher consciousness. That's where all of your awareness lies. It doesn't lie in being a little child, you know. And even when I was a kid, for a hot minute, you know, because things were pretty rough at times, and kids, I hated school, and you know, and there was a time, how do I get out of this, you know, this freaking being targeted and so on and so forth. Maybe if people felt sorry for me, you know, maybe they'll, you know, and shoot, as soon as I started feeling that way, and I made moves towards it, it was just, I almost threw up. It's like, this is not right. Doesn't make any sense. I decided that I would mature, and I would do all the things that I could do to mature. And it wasn't like the nonsensical things when I was a kid. Kids thought that, oh yeah, having sex at the age of 12, yeah, that's maturity. No, that's not maturity. But I'm talking about literally being able to figure things out for myself, you know, hoping that when it came time for me to leave home, I could do it without, you know, feeling like I was, you know, walking into some horror film or something like that. So again, I can't say enough against the inner child stuff. And, you know, it was posted in some smart aleck was like, well, I'm going to look for both. It won't work, stupid. You're either a child or you're an adult. You can be an adult and be playful and have a good sense of humor. Humor is not, it's not, well, some humor people are, you know, humor is childish. But humor and having a sense of curiosity does not belong to children. If you're an older person and you don't find anything humorous and you're not curious, it means something's dying in you. It doesn't mean that your child is dying. It means that your consciousness is dying. You should be able to have humor. You should be able to feel wonderment when, you know, certain things, you know, not like, oh, like that. It's like, wow, that's really cool as an adult. You know. So anyway, we can move on.
Yes, Chief. Okay. So there's a place called Imagination Land inside of Riley's mind, and it is contaminated by a ton of MCs as well. The MCs are the ones who also are in charge of doing acting inside of the dream realm.
All right. Yeah, MCs were. Yeah.
And they do the will of the writers. We don't even know who those are, but from what the analogy, Neo Shamanic analogy, they would be external density controlling Riley.
Yeah.
So then there's like all different types of squatters as well in her imagination, not just MCs.
Mm-hmm.
There were like cloud people, just like other different types of attachments. They even have a police system in that cloud.
Well, it's a lot of garbage that people pick up in their lives because they're not aware. And again, it's not your fault that you're not aware. It's just the way the system wants it to be. So you're walking through, I don't know, just poison nettles or something like that, or poison ivy, and nobody's ever told you that, you know, poison ivy is poison. So you're walking through, and you know, some people, they can put two and two together. So why am I getting these welts and things, and then put two and two together? But there are so many people who are just walking blind. Like I said, the on remote control, you know, their panel is literally just locked down, and no one can change the settings unless you come to the right person, which is me. So that's, you know, so what Ms. A was talking about, her whole energy, which I like the fact that they showed it that way, because a lot of the times I can see aspects of that when I'm working on a client. So it's not like, you know, I'm seeing this person's body. I see deep into their body, and so the way that they portrayed it, I actually, you know, I liked that. It smacked more reality than a lot of the other stuff that was going on in the movie.
Yes, and they even did a good job of portraying MCs, because the amoebas that were smaller, you know, they were there acting out the scene of the dream, but then the security guards looked just like amoebas but bigger. And it's funny because Chief has always talked about how MCs can become attachments. And some of it, for examples, are some clients, they're so obsessed with food that it is the dominant attachment in their energy. And they would rather not have sessions, they'd rather not care about their energy and just have their best friend food around.
Well, they'd have sessions as long as I didn't,
Oh, yeah.
grill them on the food issue.
Yeah.
But some of them were just complaining about things that had to do with food. Oh, my knees are really achy, or somebody was complaining about her bladder all the time, and she's shaped like a bowling ball, and she's, and you look at her stomach, here's the bladder, here's the stomach, pressure. And no matter how I explained it, her MC, who was an attachment that she wouldn't let go of, again, that's another issue, people not letting go of things. When I tell them let go of them, I'll rip them out, but then again, they'll just try to find a replacement a lot of the time because the food is their comfort thing. So this individual, I put them through a little more of a stringent session. I had someone come in, my hit person come in and deal with the food thing. But she's very good at that. And the person couldn't lie her way around it. And, and the team member was not being mean or nasty or anything, just gave some logical, said, well, if you think you're not eating that much, why don't you take a picture of what you're eating before you eat it? You put it on the plate, you're serving, take a picture of that serving. And I don't think she said even show it to her. She said, look at it after you.
No, she said send it to us.
Oh, said send it. Okay, so she said send it. That's probably what was a clincher. Said so send it to to us, and we'll tell you whether that's a human-sized portion or cow-sized portion or whatever the heck she was eating. But the person was obviously eating way too much. But also I'm a vegetarian. Was her line? I'm a vegetarian because I'm a vegetarian. I shouldn't be getting heavy.
And then we said, a diet could be really good for you. And then she's like, oh, I tried to diet 5 years ago. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years ago, I've given it my shot. I just want you to give me a magic bullet. And then all of a sudden, or I'm going to just poke her with a pin and all the air has just come out. And then she's going to be the stealth person. So this illogical thing that I found that goes along with food, and I've noticed that for decades with individuals. I'm in men's groups with guys who are overweight. And I would just, look, logically, this is what you need to do. Your body metabolism is slowing down. Don't eat as much. But I feel hungry. What, you're going to die because you feel hungry? But they act like they're going to die. And they would never lose weight.
And this person would say that she sees that her portions are small. And this movie does also a good representation how the eyes can be manipulated to see something that is not there. Maybe the floor turned to lava, or whatever, the child's eyes see it that way. And for this person, they always saw their plate as small. But whenever Chief's team member tapped into what she was really feeding herself, she said, whenever the lady said, "Oh yeah, I eat a little rice," and she was like, "I don't see a little rice. I see fields of rice in her energy."
Yeah, literally, and she looked like she ate fields of rice, really. And I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but no, I'm not trying to. But,
No, it's an example of someone who's allowed an MC to become an attachment.
Yeah, and again, it's an MC that's become an attachment. Because to tell the truth, the person was doing quite well. They got very empathic. Some really interesting sessions with this individual. But that was their hurdle that they just refused to try to jump. Had to do with the food. And again, people talk about, it's I'm a vegetarian, I'm a vegan. There's times I just don't have the patience. Look, elephants are vegans, hippos are vegans, cows are vegans. They're not slim. They eat a lot. You're eating more than you should eat. That's all there is to it. Just deal with the discomfort of hunger for probably a couple weeks, because I had some issues, well over about 15 years ago, where I put on some serious pounds, and I prescribed to myself the same thing I prescribed to those individuals, and I lost the weight. So anyway, we're getting away from the weight thing and into the.
Okay, so then they were showing about MCs, and then larger MCs that can become attachments, and then also it was interesting because the MCs, they just do kind of whatever they want to do. Like they were sending up this annoying commercial song and just sending it up to Riley's mind and, you know, like tormenting her, you know, just for the fun of it. And they were building a house of cards in her energy. And it was really interesting because in her imagination, there was nothing original. Everything was a prescribed thought by something external. So this house of cards, the queen was her father unit, the queen was her mother unit, and the father unit was the king. So it's showing it even in her own mind, these are like kind of like things are set up.
Thoughts.
Yeah, program
Yeah, because most people don't have original thoughts. Most don't. And they're taught to not have original thoughts, even when they're telling them they're having an original thought. But they're talking about original thought within this box, within these parameters, which means that you're restricting your ability to expand as far as you can possibly expand. But you were saying something else about the
game night. Game night.
Oh, now that was part of the movie too. They had this game night thing.
Inside of the Imagination Land, there was all these boxes of games and things like that.
Yeah, even game night is one of those things of a program or locking one down into like a schedule. So if you don't, and I've known people who've had this little thing where they get together and they do this one function, one night out of the week, every week, you know. And if they can't make it, it's like a so-called family get together. If they can't make it, they just sweat bullets. And game night's supposed to be fun, but when they put a schedule on it, then it ceases to be fun anymore.
And if you're having game night with very competitive family members, it's not fun at all. I've had relatives that they invited me to play their Mortal Kombat game, and then I beat them at it, and then they proceeded to have a fit and beat another cousin because they were mad at me. And or they like, if you win too many times in a row, they start giving you the evil eye. It's like, what's the point of family night? I'd rather stay in my room.
Yeah, and a lot of times because they're feeding off you on top of it. So there are times when, you're actually better at a game than them. And it said, look, you guys are really poor losers. I'm not, Then you get the call, hey, you going to show up for game night? I say, why? So you can torment me? But again, when they're talking about something like in this movie, they're talking about this one kid. But they did talk about the parents. So I'm not going to, just totally slam them. They did talk about the interaction with the attachments of the parents and so on. But a lot of the focus has to do with, again, like a world where you don't interact with other people that much or at all. So some of the things that they had created there didn't seem like it was really took into consideration how it would adjust to interacting with individuals who had an adverse type of behavior towards them. Would you say that, or maybe I'm just missing something?
I'm not sure because like it just sometimes when like with this Riley kid, she seemed to be like you said, when people don't move from one town, they stay there for most of their life or for a long time. That child can become so accustomed to that environment that if you take them out and put them into another, they have shock because they can't imagine anything else. Especially if this child is used to just getting whatever it wants to have.
Yeah, but again, I'll tag onto that one. I have relatives who grew up and live in one city, and they're still there. And in that time, when I was, I believe, 19, well, we lived outside of the city, but when I was 19, I left the state and went to school. And then, after school, I didn't go back, to that state. I went elsewhere. And and my experience is because I was willing to move into, to, I don't know, say experiment with my life and what I thought I wanted to do, my work got a lot more expansive. And I got a chance to meet a lot more different types of people from different places and so on and so forth. And these individuals who would only take vacations And I don't know if some of you have ever been to like I went to the islands some years ago, and when you travel that way, it's like tourist travel. You don't really know any, you don't really learn anything about the people. And if there's someone of that, from that location that was talking to you, they probably talked to a bunch of other tourists. So you're not really getting a good picture of the culture and so on and so forth. But you were saying that I was trying to tack on to the part where you're saying that where they don't expand, they don't, the part where her having a fit about leaving and moving to another location and so on and so forth. I feel it has something to do with densities, wanting you to stay ignorant. There are some who talk about in their religion, and when I was dating a girl back when I was in college, the church that she belonged to, the pastor would say things like, it is sinful to be worldly, and I might have mentioned this before, that it's sinful to be worldly. And the only reason it is sinful to be worldly is because density can't pull the wool over your eyes so easily if you've had other experiences with other people and other situations.
Yeah, there's even Bible verses that are telling you to let God think for you, or let Jesus think for you. Mm-hmm. It's just like when in this movie, it's obvious that they're letting the attachments think for them. Mm-hmm. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. It's just like an Inside Out. She's always allowing these attachments to tell her what to do, tell her what to say, show her where to go, or just make her go.
Yeah, but then again, she doesn't even know what's going on inside of her own head. So that's the other thing. People, as a majority, don't even know what's going on inside their own head, only that they know that they're struggling with something. Those who are very, very honest with me will tell me that they hear voices telling them to do things opposite of what they feel is the right thing to do. Or they just give them too many choices to pick from, knowing and hoping that they're going to choose the wrong one. And a lot of times density will out-yell your logical self because it doesn't get fed. So the voice is kind of weak. The things that get fed is the density, is the dense concepts. Those are things that get fed. Just even what's going on currently, even with this business, with this COVID business, the noise and the voices about pro-vaccination are much louder because they're fed by the system than those who are having critical thinking about the logistics of it. And I have questions and so on and so forth. I want more information and so on. And they literally will restrict that information. That's how density works in totality with everything. Anything that's going to cause you to actually think before you leap, they don't want that. They want you to say leap, and they want you to ask them how high.
Okay, so another thing, that's the reason why we talked about reading the definition of inner child and things, is because in her imagination land, there's also preschool world, and it has stuff like Sparkle Pony Mountain, Princess Dream World, Stuffed Animal Hall of Fame, all these things that are just contamination. There's not even real imagination at all.
Yeah, some would consider that, harking back to their inner child or something.
Trophy world.
You said in Trophy World.
Yeah, Trophy World.
Yeah, all those moments that are, supposed to be pivotal moments.
Imaginary boyfriend machine.
Oh yeah,
Imaginary
boyfriend
land
machine.
too. I'm like, great. And then they made him essential to the survival of Riley, because all of these boyfriends that are like, I die for Riley, get like stacked up on one another and help Joy get to the console in the end, because they try to make something dense essential in movies.
But it gets very dangerous to a lot of young girls.
Preschool.
Yeah, preschools, but it sticks with them. So we're talking about finding a child. It might be right on the surface, really. But this whole concept that the guy's like, oh, I'll die for you, I'll die for you, I'll die for you. And it was like a mantra in the movie, with these guys, every time she created one, I'll die for you. And then lo and behold, some young woman, she's, ready for romance or whatever. So she's looking for this guy who says, I'll die for you. When, if there's some guy that says he'll die for you, and you believe that shit, that's your fault. But again, if he'll die for you, then there's something wrong with him also. So again, it was setting her up for disappointment. It's this fantasy guy. We did Cinderella, and we went deep into that stuff. This concept that there's this prince guy or something who's going to, if you're lucky enough or whatever, or pretty enough, this guy's going to whisk you away, and and happily ever after, no worries. So.
Yeah, and you were talking about, Chief, how when people's imagination are not really, it is so contaminated, they can never think outside of this realm. So contaminated.
Yeah.
That everything within their mind is only level 1, only the hologram, only whatever density wants them to think of.
Yeah, and they don't know that they're thinking with a very dense mind, I should say. Had a situation with there's another team member working on someone, and he had all this, all these attachments on him, and so she's pulling these things off, and the guy can feel this, this stuff coming off of him, and she says, have to delete them, and send them to the vortex and return, and he says, well, isn't there some way we can rehabilitate them? Is there some way we can do this without killing them and getting rid of them? And that is like a Yenivian brainwash, because they'll tell the victims that they should, forgive and forget and all that business. Take the lenient route. Heaven forbid that you are, you want to take them out, because then aren't you like, the density that is beating you upside the head, which means there's no balance there. We're about balance. So she said, look at it this way. I'm probably not going to say it exactly the way she said it, but literally having to do with something is trying to kill you. And every time you turn your back on it, it's trying to stab you in the back. What are you going to do? You're just going to keep playing, oh, don't do that. That's not nice. They don't care. They're just going to keep it, keep at it. So my process is very, very, very logical. I deal with the problem. Because I don't want to be turning around every freaking, 5 minutes to see that this idiot that I'm giving uber chances to, trying to stab me in the back over and over again. So you had started with that, with something that I kind of went.
We have about 7 minutes, so I can get on to the last thing,
Okay.
which is how they try to make sadness useful. Would you like to go
Yeah,
into
we can
that?
go there.
Okay, so they were trying to portray sadness as like, you need sadness because it can help someone get over, their problem by you being sad with them.
Oh, right. You said there's some religious stuff.
There are a lot of Bible verses that encourage this behavior too. And if you think about it, if there's any authorized system within the matrix, it's going to feed essence to density. So if they encourage it, if religion is going to encourage it, it's because it feeds essence. So you have like Bible verses that are like bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Or if they say like if someone's sad, you need to weep with them. Blessed are those who weep. So they're just encouraging you to feed essence to density.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. So it's like, well, we got one person who's sobbing, the more the merrier. So there are individuals who will literally call others just to have them cry with them. And there are some who feel because, I'm supposed to be their friend, or I'm supposed to be their sibling and so on. Maybe I should do this, because nothing is out there telling you that it's not healthy to do that, to actually do that. Because you are, and they are already feeding essence. And again, they say, oh, yeah, I slept so well after. Yeah, you slept hard because you tapped out, I don't know, this much essence that will never be regained. And your basin is really refilling. And by the time your basin refills, and you feel a little more energetic or whatever, but you've already lost its essence, and it keeps going and going and going and going every time you play into this stuff, and it happens over lifetimes at times. Some situations, depending on how much focus a person has on, they'll turn into black ooze in one lifetime. So literally, that's what's going on. You're feeding your essence something. And of course, they're going to tell you all these things to promote it. They'll always tell you to sacrifice yourself, your well-being, your balance for someone else. It's like, well, the most I can do is have a session with the chief, and but I'm not going to sit and cry with you. Read the book. It'll tell you about this stuff, but I'm not going to sit here and cry with you because I want all my essence for myself. I've already lost enough as it is, and I'm not about to lose any more.
And in the movie, they do a good example of romanticizing about past things and crying about it. Like she was crying about how Riley would stick her tongue out when she was coloring, just like little minor things. Go ahead.
This is what makes me itch. But dude, even when I was a kid, that kind of stuff annoyed me. It was like, all the little things you used to do when you were, really little, and I'm like, I'm not, I'm not a toddler anymore. Quit bringing this crap up.
The mother unit that I have or had, she'd always be like, "Oh, honey, you're sleeping in the fetal position just like you did when you were a kid. I'm freaking uncomfortable around you. That's why I'm sleeping in the freaking fetal position." I'm like, jeez.
Yeah, well, when they do studies on sleep studies, that fetal position
they're not comfortable.
It has to do with insecurity.
Yeah,
Feeling really unsafe.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, so cute. I'm like, go away.
Yeah. No, there's plenty of things that literally are just designed. Yeah, designed as pitfalls and designed to just make you into what they want you to be as food again.
And this movie did a great job of showing you how one concept compounds upon another to bring you down.
Mm-hmm.
Fear, sadness, disgust,
Mm-hmm.
anger, and then you've got this romanticizing past memories. You've got preschool world. You got trophy. You got hockey island. You got family island. You got friend island. All these things adding up, as Chief calls the weight of the density in your energy. That's why people, the more density they have, the more heavy they feel.
Well, they also had she was recreating herself, or the emotions recreated. I guess it was joy.
Uh-huh.
Joy was able to put it together where everybody had an equal role. So when
well, actually, it was all mostly her.
it was all joy.
She tried to keep it all joy, and she would try to keep their roles to a minimum.
But did she have where sadness leached into some other thing and found that it was good that sadness leached into these other memories?
That's
or something
the
like
whole movie, trying to show you the value of the other emotions. That they should have had a larger role than joy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whatever you think.
No, I agree.
Because most of the memories were yellow in the visuals.
Yeah, joy memories.
Yeah, because she said she wants Riley to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
The other emotions just do their thing, and all their memories are like green or red or the color that represents them.
Well, also they're saying you can never be happy. Also.
Yeah.
So this one person, this one I guess fragment. They're trying to say that she was just unrealistic in the whole idea of someone being happy. Me, it's not so much about happiness; it's about balance. So within that, there's still, with my concept of balance, sadness, fear, and all that stuff still doesn't have a place. There are things where you have to figure things out. You have to overcome certain things. If it's a balanced environment, you just overcome these certain things. And it's a little hard for me to actually get a little deeper into it. I think I might have stepped into something that.
What you were saying brought to mind when I was younger. I experienced really high highs, like where everyone's excited and really what they consider happy, and then really low lows. And I thought, I would let go of all the really high highs just for an even even keel, like an even ocean, even, the
Yeah.
water being calm.
Yeah. So even in the sense, it goes into a little bit more of an abstract thing. We're saying, well, even the whole concept of happiness and sad or whatever, and then having, balance, which someone said, well, isn't that like they're dead? You don't have any emotions and so on. The reality is that you do feel and sense things. There is satisfaction, there is joy in things, but they want you to feel like you got to have the anger, you got to have this extreme sadness, and you got to have this disgust. That half, it doesn't need to be there. And also, if you're balanced, your highs aren't going to be, insane highs. Where you're so, overwhelmingly happy that you don't pay attention to anything. I'm about balance, and it's not, and being about balance is a really good thing as far as I'm concerned. And the more that I saw balance, the better things went for me. I didn't have these, and I never really was someone who went to high highs and low lows, except probably at some point I did, as a kid, certain things happen. You can be in the basement for a while with how you feel. But then the highs, as far as like how density works, highs are just basically to get you to fill up your basin faster, and then they cut the happiness out, and then they put the stress in there. So you have a good 90% stress and all this other stuff, and maybe 10% happiness. I think we must have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
One of the main things about this movie, whenever I was watching it, I could feel this mantra just hitting me in the face about believe you need emotions, believe, and how much density uses belief and faith and hope and all those things to feed.
Yeah.
It's time.
Okay. Yeah, and also they use the fear to so that if you don't feel these things, you're supposed to be afraid and feel like something's out of whack. So I got to go to a therapist because I didn't cry when someone passed on or transitioned out. It wasn't like I said, yeah, so what? It's just like, okay, I just observed it as a kid, and I would never cry. I just observed. And someone was like, well, if you're not crying, something's wrong. I think you even had something like that happen as well. Yeah. But anyway, it looks like the time is up.
Yeah, it flew by. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, before we go, anyone have any questions? I heard someone rustle over there.
I was just saying thank you. That was really fun to listen to and interesting.
Okay, you're welcome, Jessica. Okay, everyone, I enjoyed it. It started out a little weird as usual, but I appreciate everyone showing up and the questions and everything. And you all have a good one.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.